Hello everybody, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Kayla, and this is The Deal with Allergies and Dining at Lehigh University. Today, we are getting into the raw, real, allergen world of Lehigh dining. We're talking about the main dining ecosystem: Rathbone, Brodhead, the UC, and Hawksneck. Now, while there are coffee shops and food trucks on campus, I wouldn't necessarily consider those as the core sit-down dining, so they're not a part of this conversation today. Now, one thing I really respect and value in any situation is an open, honest, and ongoing dialogue. A dialogue is important because it brings people together and allows them to grow and learn. When we stop talking, you stop growing and we stop learning from each other. Whether you improve upon your viewpoint, broaden your viewpoint, or become more factual and confident in your viewpoint, you can always benefit from having a dialogue. Now, in that spirit, if the Lehigh Dining wants to talk to me, I am more than happy to talk. You can reach out to my guiding professor, Austin Duncan, at awd324@lehigh.edu. Let's get into it. Before we dissect our own situation, let's look at the S tier of allergen-friendly dining halls. These schools treat safety like a standard, not a favor. Cornell, Tufts, and Vanderbilt are all unique. They have entirely allergen-free dining halls. This means they have a dining hall free from what's known as the top 9 allergens. Those allergens are milk, eggs, fish, shellfish, tree nuts, peanuts, wheat, soy, and sesame. It's not a science experiment, it's just lunch. Northwestern is also pretty cool. They've got a pure station in every dining hall. A pure station, as defined by Northwestern, is a station free from the top 9 allergens. They also have one dining hall fully dedicated to pure. University of Michigan has specialized pantries for students who need total safety. What makes these pantries particularly unique is that not everyone can just easily access them. You have to take a test to prove that you understand and respect the space before you can go in it. This isn't just a luxury, it isn't a preference, it's safety. This is what happens when a university stops treating allergies like an afterthought and starts treating them like a requirement. If you're a student with allergies, when looking at college, the dining system is going to be a key part of what you're inspecting. Dining is such a core part of any student's college experience that especially if you're someone with serious allergies or allergies of any kind, it's really going to be at the top of your list of what's important. This isn't a luxury, this isn't a preference, it's safety. This is what happens when universities stop treating allergies like an afterthought and start treating them like a requirement. Now, let's look at the Lehigh gap. It's the space between we care about the student health and actually providing a meal. On the weekend, the safe UC options like leaf and ladle and simple servings just stop existing. They're closed. Apparently, food allergies take the weekend off. If you have an allergy, your weekend options are basically muffin or nothing. And I don't know many people who can survive a Sunday on a singular blueberry muffin. At Rathbone, students feel like they have to beg for transparency. We don't want to beg. We just want to eat. We're hungry. We need a menu, not a guessing game where the prize is an EpiPen. Currently, the only 2 things labeled consistently across all locations are vegetarian meals, which again, this only covers a small portion of the need, and mindful meals. If you can tell me what mindful meals are without looking it up, major points to you. I cannot imagine that most people are just going to understand what that means. The word mindful is often associated with wellness, but can be open to many different interpretations. Therefore, is not easily identifiable in what it means. Then there's Brodhead. Beyond the lack of transparency, students feel like they have to beg for access. Now I get it. Brodhead is an upperclassman dorm, which is a standard excuse for why the access is so restricted. But let's look at SMH. That's also an upperclassman dorm, yet it houses a gym that every single student on campus can access and use without a second thought. If we can coordinate a campus-wide access for a treadmill, we can surely do it for dining. It's a dining hall that serves as a very expensive storage unit for 2.5 days out of 7. We're hungry, Lehigh. Open the doors. Now, as I mentioned earlier, a dialogue and a conversation is very important to me. In order to improve upon this conversation and bring in more voices, I decided to send out a survey to campus. This survey was promoted through TV ads, social media, posters, and email. Now, let's get into it. The average age range of the respondents for my survey was between 18 and 22, which makes a lot of sense because we are on a college campus. When asked what allergies you have, the top allergies were gluten and dairy, followed by tree nuts and then peanuts. The majority of people who pick tree nuts also pick peanuts and vice versa. When asked if you always feel safe eating at Lehigh, the majority of people said sometimes. Sometimes when it comes to dining doesn't cut it. It can't be a guessing game whether or not the next meal is going to make you sick. When asked how clearly you feel allergens are labeled at Lehigh, the majority of people said somewhat clearly. Again, somewhat isn't gonna cut it in the world of allergies. It needs to be always. People need the transparency to know that they're gonna be safe and that they're gonna be okay eating. Nutrition is very important to a college student or any person's life as it's what keeps you going, it keeps your muscles moving, it keeps your brain pumping, and poor nutrition can lead to a whole host of issues, including poor mental health, poor physical health, and as a student, a slip in grade, or in general, a slip/withdraw in terms of your social life. When asked how easy you find it to see ingredient information, the majority of people said somewhat easy. Again, it should be super easy. When asked how knowledgeable you think staff are about food allergies, the majority of people said somewhat knowledgeable. They think it could be even better. I think this shows that there are some staff that are super knowledgeable, while others who maybe for whatever reason, either they're a bit new or didn't receive the proper training, aren't as knowledgeable. There should be a set standard for the training that the staff receive throughout. When asked if you feel comfortable asking staff about ingredient and food preparations, the majority of people said yes. This made me feel really good, as when people did have the confidence to ask, which again is not always, they did feel like they were getting quality information. When asked if you've ever experienced a reaction due to your college dining, the majority of people were split. When asked about the severity of their reaction, the majority of people said they became incredibly ill and they were sick and they were skipping class due to the situation. One person even noted that they had bad health the whole time they ate on campus. While that was a specific sentiment from one person, it was echoed throughout other respondents. When asked if you felt this could have been prevented, here are a few responses that stood out to me. One person said, the incident could have potentially been prevented if identifying information had been present. Another respondent said cross-contamination and knowing about it is a factor that could have influenced prevention. While these are just two respondents, I felt like they really encapsulated and summarized a lot of what people were saying. When asked specifically, given your allergies, how do you feel the food option availability is during the week? The majority of people said somewhat good or bad. While the section of somewhat good was bigger than bad, I still think it could be even better. The fact that people don't feel as comfortable as we want them to feel is a little bit sad. When asked, given your allergies, how do you feel the food option availability is during the week? The majority of people said somewhat good, followed by bad, followed by very good. I think it's important to note that this section had no very bad and did include some very good, which makes me feel good. The majority of people said somewhat good, but I really truly wish everyone had said very good. And the fact that some people still said bad shows that even during the week, there is still a slack that needs to be picked up. When asked, given your allergies, how do you feel the food option availability is during the weekend? The majority of people said bad, followed by very bad. This time, there is no very good, there is no somewhat good. There is only bad and very bad. This shows that there is a stark difference between the week and the weekend. There is a clear slack that needs to be picked up in order to have the weekend meet the minimum that the week is meeting. However, both can be bumped up in several ways that we'll dive into a little bit later. When asked what station they feel most safe eating at, the majority of people said Rathbone or the simple servings at the UC. When asked what locations they feel least safe at and they try to avoid, the majority of people said Hawk's Nest because they don't trust the food quality and they feel there is a huge lack of transparency. When asked what is one tangible short-term thing you would like to see Lehigh Dining improve on, here are a few responses. One person said, improvement is needed in accurately and clearly labeling allergens, including specifying when a food item does not contain allergens. I think this is really important, as if an item does not specifically denote one way or another, as someone with allergies, you have to assume it is not safe for you. Another person said they would like to see an increase in overall healthy dining choices that are allergen friendly. Welcome to the game portion of this show, Safe or Sketchy. I'm Kayla. I'm still your host. We're going to take a tour of the campus dining ecosystem, so hop on in. Please keep your hands and feet inside the vehicle until we have come to a complete stop. Avoid the urge to touch the grass or feed the wildlife. We're grading campus dining on a simple 6-point scale, 2 points each for transparency, optionality, and accessibility. We'll end each round with a fix in the spirit of a conversation and an ongoing dialogue. Alright, and to begin our tour on campus, we're going to start off with Rathbone Dining Hall. Rathbone Dining Hall is your classic college dining hall. It's all you can eat and serves up 3 meals a day. Rathbone Dining Hall is in the heart of the freshman village and is loved and very popular among the freshmen. Rathbone Dining Hall has a score of 1.5 out of 6. For transparency, they have a 0. You can look up the allergens online, but the website is a labyrinth and rarely matches the reality of the buffet line. They have a disclaimer basically saying every surface might be coated in every allergen known to man. They tell you to contact them with any questions, but no one wants to wait 2 to 3 business days for their next meal. We're hungry. We want to eat now, not next Tuesday. For optionality, they have 0. They have a simple serving station that is supposed to be free from 8 of the top 9 allergens. Yes, you heard that right. Not even all 9, just 8 of the top 9 allergens. So in some unknown formula, they have decided which allergens are going to be the ones that are most important to be free from. This doesn't entirely make sense to me, because then they go on to list 7, not even 8 allergens that the station is free from. So how are you deciding which ones are important enough to be excluded and which ones are not important enough? That sounds quite fishy to me. For availability, this is where they get some points. They have a 1.5 because they are open every day. That's the only reason they aren't at 0. Ladies and gents, this is the moment you've waited for. As the host of this podcast, it is now time for me to read out the verdict. It is by the judgment of this podcast episode, the deal with allergies at Lehigh University, that Rathbone Dining Hall is hereby determined to be, drumroll please, sketchy. And at this time, this is when we would usually do our fix, but our next stop is quite similar, and therefore to avoid repetition, we will be doing the fix together. And our next stop on the tour, we're going to drive down the hill to Brodhead Dining Hall. Brodhead Dining Hall is essentially a smaller version of Rathbone, serving up 3 meals a day, Monday through Thursday. Brodhead Dining Hall has a score of 0 out of 6. For transparency, they have a 0. The same, maybe it's safe, maybe it's not disclaimer as Rathbone. Maybe doesn't work when your throat is closing. Maybe doesn't work when your life is at stake, because second chances do not exist. For optionality, they have a 0. If you have to cross-examine a chef just to get a piece of chicken, that's not an option. That's an interrogation. For accessibility, 0. They close at 2 p.m. on a Friday and stay closed all weekend. That's not a dining hall. That's a pop-up shop. Watch your step as we move on. Ladies and gents, this is the moment you've waited for. As the host of this podcast, it is now time for me to read out the verdict. It is by the judgment of this podcast episode, the deal with allergies at Lehigh University, that Brodhead Dining Hall is hereby determined to be, drumroll please, Sketchy. And it is now at this time that we will do the fix for both Rathbone Dining Hall and Brodhead Dining Hall. But first up, there needs to be better menu transparency. The menu needs to be more clearly labeled on all of the TVs with all of the allergens, as well as a QR code that you can scan and pull up a clear grid of what is free from what allergens would be extremely helpful. More options such as gluten-free pasta and more proteins that have their sauce on the side so they can be enjoyed by all would also be pretty great in improving the dining hall situation. And join me now driving back up the hill. Our next stop on the tour is Hawk's Nest. Hawk's Nest is divided into two locations. It has the main bowl and the sushi and the nest at night. We're gonna start off with the main bowl and sushi, which serves up Asian cuisine. They have a score of 0 out of 6. For transparency, 0. Same online menu situation as we've seen before. Keep your feet tucked in. We're moving fast as this one. For optionality, 0. Sushi is a minefield of fish and shellfish. Main bowl is a minefield of soy sauce and wheat-based sauces. For accessibility, 0. Sushi is closed on weekends, and while main bowl is open part of the weekend, if you don't serve all of the campus, you're not accessible.
Ladies and gents, this is the moment you've waited for.
As the host of this podcast, it is now time for me to read out the verdict. It is by the judgment of this podcast episode, the deal with allergies at Lehigh University, that main bowl and sushi is hereby determined to be, drumroll please, sketchy. And on to our fix for main bowl and sushi. Switch to tamari. It's 2026. Why are we still using wheat-filled soy sauce? It tastes the same and opens up the whole menu. And next up, we are going to our second location at Hawk's Nest, the Nest at Night, which serves up fried comfort food late at night. The Nest at Night has a score of 0.5 out of 6. For transparency, 0. The menu is not clearly labeled and it's impossible to tell what is allergen free and what is not. For optionality, 0. They offer a gluten-free bun for a fried chicken sandwich. If the fried chicken is breaded in flour, the bun is just a hat on a gluten bomb. It's like wearing a raincoat in the rain and only putting it on one of your arms and not the other. In addition, they have something called rice and lettuce bowls. These bowls have 3 different options for chicken protein, yet all 3 of them are fried. Do you really need 3 different fried chicken options? Why can't one of them not be fried or be fried in a way that's more allergen friendly? Very disappointing. For accessibility, 0.5. This is where they get some points because in addition to being in the center of campus, unlike other locations, they are open much later, which is very rare and very cool. But in the end, if you're not truly serving campus, you just cannot be winning.
Ladies and gents, this is the moment you've waited for.
As the host of this podcast, it is now time for me to read out the verdict. It is by the judgment of this podcast episode, the deal with allergies at Lehigh University, that the Nest at Night is hereby determined to be, drumroll please, sketchy. And now we will be driving to the UC. Beautiful new building. Starting off our tour at the UC with the Hearth, which serves up Italian cuisine such as pasta, pizza, and breadsticks. The Hearth has a score of 0.5 out of 6. For optionality, 0. If you're dairy-free or gluten-free, your meal is a cup of red sauce. Not exactly the Hearth experience I was hoping for. Please remain seated while we complete the nutritional value of a single cup of red sauce. Not very high and not very protein-filled. Next up, for transparency, we are at 0. It's very hard to understand what's in the different sauces. If you can't fully understand what's in the sauces, even if you can eat potentially the pasta, you can't eat at that location because you cannot guarantee you're gonna be safe. For accessibility, this is where they have a 0.5. They're in the center of campus, which is super convenient, and on the weekdays, they're open till 8, which is also pretty nice. Ladies and gents, this is the moment you've waited for. As the host of this podcast, it is now time for me to read out the verdict. It is by the judgment of this podcast episode, the deal with allergies at Lehigh University, that the hearth is hereby determined to be, drumroll please, sketchy. And now we will move on to our fix. I feel like one thing that I keep repeating on is we need better menu transparency. The menu needs to be more clearly labeled. It needs to be more accessible. As I've said before, in addition to clearly labeling the menu, if we could have a QR code that could easily pull up an even more detailed grid, that would truly change the game. In addition, gluten-free pasta would really bump up the hearth's significance. And walking right next door this time, we have Kalamata, which serves up Mediterranean cuisine with a score of 3 out of 6. Not too bad. For transparency, we have 0. The menu is not clearly labeled, and certain items, such as falafel, that could be gluten-free, it's a mystery whether or not they are, so people with allergens cannot eat them. For optionality, they are at 1.5. They actually have pretty good options. They have rice bowls and lettuce bowls and french fries that are all allergen friendly. They lose a point because one of the core parts of their station is pita bread and toppings, which if you're not able to eat pita bread, completely knocks out a section of their menu and not a small section. For accessibility, they are at 1. Closed on weekends. Again, we're still hungry on Saturdays, and they get their point because they're in the center of campus, but they lose the other point that they could have because they're closed on weekends.
Ladies and gents, this is the moment you've waited for.
As the host of this podcast, it is now time for me to read out the verdict. It is by the judgment of this podcast episode, the deal with allergies at Lehigh University, that Kalamata is hereby determined to be, drumroll please, sketchy-ish. On to the fix. I think gluten-free pita would be a great way to really open up a whole other half, yes you heard me, of the menu, as well as weekend hours would be significantly helpful to the overall improvement of the campus dining situation. And next up, rounding the corner, we have Simple Serving, the Mexican station at the UC. For transparency, too, they are free from all of the top 9 allergens. This is huge. It's a rare moment of clarity in the fog. For optionality, too, the dairy-free cheese at Leaf and Ladle is a really, really nice bonus. It keeps the Simple Serving station clean, but it also allows those who want it the cheese and sour cream they desire. For accessibility, 1. Closed on the weekends. I think that's all we need to say here. Safety doesn't take a day off, Lehigh.
Ladies and gents, this is the moment you've waited for.
As the host of this podcast, it is now time for me to read out the verdict. It is by the judgment of this podcast episode, the deal with allergies at Lehigh University, that Simple Serving is hereby determined to be, drumroll please, safe. And on quickly to our fix. Really, the only fix I see here is just weekend hours to have a really, really awesome safe station open on the weekends would be amazing. And right next door, we have Leaf and Ladle, which serves up soups, salads, and sandwiches. Leaf and Ladle has a score of 3. For transparency, they have 0. Again, we need improvement on the labeling. There are so many soups, dressings, and different salad items that it's hard to keep track of what people with allergies can and cannot eat. For optionality, 1.5. They have good salads with a lot of good options, but they are lacking in the soup selection. A lot of the soups have gluten or other allergens that people cannot eat, as well as they have grilled cheese and sandwich options that people with allergies can't eat due to certain ingredients. Furthermore, a big part of the salads is the side bread and the croutons, which people, depending upon their allergies, again, cannot eat. For accessibility, 1.5. They're in the center of campus, but they're not open on weekends. I think we can sense a common theme about the hours and how they can be improved.
Ladies and gents, this is the moment you've waited for.
As the host of this podcast, it is now time for me to read out the verdict. It is by the judgment of this podcast episode, the deal with allergies at Lehigh University that Leaf and Ladle is hereby determined to be, drumroll please, sketchy-ish. And on to the fix. For the fix, I think the biggest things here are more transparency in the labeling, like we've been saying at all the other locations, as well as more allergen-friendly options for the soups and for the sandwiches, like gluten-free bread or dairy-free cheese. And lastly, you guessed it, weekend hours. And next up, we're going to be heading downstairs to Ace's Place, which serves up all-day breakfast and a few lunch items. For transparency, 0. The menu is somewhat labeled, but again, it's just not very clear what is in specific ingredients like sauces and specific dishes beyond a generalization. For optionality, 1. They have a waffle without gluten, not gluten-free, just without it. It sounds like a legal disclaimer, not a meal. Also, they took away the hawk chicken sandwich, the one safe lunch option people like. Please, you're listening. Pretty please bring back the hawk chicken sandwich. Because right now, the only other lunch options are a burger, which again, not everyone can eat due to dietary religious preferences, or a veggie burger that is not allergen friendly. For accessibility, 2, they're in the center of campus and the weekend hours are there. They're from 10:30 to 3, so that's that core brunch hour. I guess we don't eat dinner on the weekend, so oops. Keep your hands inside. The hunger pangs might make you reach for the nearest exit.
Ladies and gents, this is the moment you've waited for.
As the host of this podcast, it is now time for me to read out the verdict. It is by the judgment of this podcast episode, the deal with allergies at Lehigh University that Ace's Place is hereby determined to be, drumroll please, sketchy. On to the fix. I think that one thing that would be really good here is bringing back the hawk chicken sandwich and also more gluten-free bread for the breakfast sandwiches. Right now, there's none of that. So that would be significantly helpful in opening up the menu and opening up the accessibility. And right next door, we have our final stop on the tour, South Mountain Deli, which serves up a variety of kosher-friendly sandwiches. South Mountain Deli has a score of 0.5 out of 6. For transparency, 0. I think we've gone over the menu situation enough here to know what we're dealing with. For optionality, 0. A deli with 0 gluten-free bread is just not accessible for everyone. That's a bold strategy. For accessibility, 0.5. It's in the center of campus, but it doesn't serve the whole campus. It's open when other things are closed, which would be great if you could actually eat there.
Ladies and gents, this is the moment you've waited for.
As the host of this podcast, it is now time for me to read out the verdict. It is by the judgment of this podcast episode, the deal with allergies at Lehigh University that South Mountain Deli is hereby determined to be, drumroll please, sketchy. Now on to the fix. I think gluten-free bread is highly necessary here. I would like to note at this time that it is a kosher deli, so that is nice for those who practice keeping kosher, but we also need to serve more than just one part of campus. We have to serve the whole campus here. So, what's the final deal here? For short term, better menu transparency, as I said, more clearly labeling the menus, as well as adding a QR code that can easily pull up a grid to give us clear details in the moment without a dissertation level of research necessary. Long term, I think it would be a really, really good idea if we could make Brodhead into a fully allergen-free dining hall. This is something we've seen highly successful at other schools, and for those who have allergies, it would really, really improve their Lehigh experience, as well as for prospective students, would really, really improve their review, as well as could potentially influence their decision to pick Lehigh over another school if they can see how Lehigh is going to properly take care of them. We want to eat. We're very hungry. Lehigh, the ball is in your court. Thank you for joining me on The Deal. This is a part of Professor Duncan's research group within the College of Health. These ideas are mine. If you want to discuss them, or if Lehigh wants to level up, you can reach out to my guiding professor, Austin Duncan, at awd324@lehigh.edu. Again, that's awd324@lehigh.edu. Good day, and thank you.